Hey, I'm Gayla. After 20 years of climbing the corporate ladder, I took the leap and started my own business to pursue my dream of creating a work-from-anywhere lifestyle. Having the freedom to work from practically anywhere is such a cool feeling. You're in the right place if you're looking for ideas and inspiration to start and grow your own online business. Every week in this podcast, you'll receive practical ideas, hints, tips, and tricks to help you grow your online business where you can leverage your time and you can accomplish more. You too can experience wonderful adventure and freedom as you live life on your own terms. Hi there, and welcome to this week's show. I am so glad you're here. You know what? I had a totally different topic in mind for this week's show, but I just wasn't feeling it. I couldn't get my thoughts organized enough to even write up an outline. And I think it's a good topic, and I'll be doing a show on it someday. But right now, at this moment, my mind is in organizing mode. At this time of the recording, it's drawing near to the end of the year. And I don't know about you, but this time of year gets me motivated to start a new year fresh. I find myself organizing and cleaning up more and just preparing for the new year. Thank goodness Robert is patient with me because I feel like a little organizing and cleaning tornado sometimes, just ready to get rid of things and start fresh. For me, I think I get this way about every quarter, roughly, or the change of the seasons. I get into heads down mode most of the time and into work, and work routine, and things just get messy. You know, I stack things up on the desk, I've got things in the drawers, things are piling up, and I save things quickly on my computer's desktop, so that I can work on a project and then I can move on. And quite frankly, things just get plain messy. So messy, in fact, that it becomes hard for me to concentrate after a while or to be efficient. And that's the moment where I say, all right, stopping everything. I got to organize before I can do anything more. And it may be that right now I'm in an organizing mood because I'm hanging out with Teresa Valesky, the organizer you met a few episodes back, as I coach her to break free from her tech phobia and scale her business online. And I'm super proud of her. I just met with her yesterday and she had her first video call. I can see the weeks that we have been working together that she is just glowing and feeling more confident because little by little she's like, well, I can do this. And seeing, her world is opening up of possibilities, and I'm just super proud of her. But rubbing shoulders with Teresa, who's a professional organizer, I think that just gets me motivated to organize too. And I take it for granted that everyone has a great system that works for them in keeping their files organized. And I'm not talking about filing cabinets. In this week's show, I'm going to talk about digital file organization. So I feel like everybody knows how to file and organize their digital files. But then I realize that many of my clients, well, the ones that are really even super tech savvy, sometimes struggle with this type of organization. So in today's show, I'm going to share how I organize my digital files. Now, I'm not going to say that my way is the best system. Everybody is an individual and it's to each its own, but the strategy that I've developed for me, it works for me. And perhaps hearing how I organize files will help you in some way feel better or give you ideas on how to organize your digital files. Okay, let's start with the file structure that I use. Now, I'm a very visual person. And I'm also a person, believe it or not, for as much digital stuff that I do, I really like tangible. For example, I'd rather read a book and mark it up or just have that real book versus reading a Kindle version. I'd rather jot things down in a meeting in a real life notebook and using a pen versus using my tablet. But over the years, I've learned to adapt and use both digital and non-digital means. For example, I won't take a ton of books on an overlanding trip. There's just simply not enough room. I can't take very many books, so I have to think digital. So instead, I'll have Kindle versions of the books that I want to read, and when I'm in internet, I'll download those and do what I need to. Besides being a huge space saver, the Kindle is backlit, so I can read whenever I want to in the tent and not disturb Robert. But I digress a little bit. But the point I'm trying to make is that over time, I've learned to adapt to new technology, even though I prefer the tangible over digital. And I have systems to where I can use both means. And honestly, having good systems to handle your digital files makes work life and personal life, for that matter, it makes it better because it saves on space and the data is portable and convenient. Nowadays, it's inevitable that you'll be working with digital files, and they can add up quickly. And if you want to be able to work from anywhere, picking up a huge filing cabinet and hauling it everywhere you go is simply not feasible. I have coaching clients that have filing cabinets and are trying to make the switch of how can I have these pieces of paper digital so that I can go to Europe for a month and still work and have video calls and have all my data right there. So it just takes a little bit of shifting and planning and new processes. But anyway, here's what I do when I file my digital documents. I imagine my File Explorer as one big filing cabinet. The images of the file folders, put me in that mindset. I'd like to think that that's how the programmers pictured it as well. It's just one big filing cabinet. And I have major folders. I separate it in really big categories at first. For example, I have my biggest folder is the Scrivener Solutions team folder. And that is everything that we have that the Scrivener Solutions team might share. And this folder has everything to do with Scrivener Solutions. Within that folder, I have subfolders. So they are organized into other big categories, like I have a marketing folder, I have client folder, I have a policies folder, an images folder. There's not a ton of folders in there, just big enough categories where things are easier to find. So if I go into the team folder and I'm looking for something to do with marketing, it will go right in there. And then within the marketing folder, I have even other folders, like, for example, podcast goes in there. And then under the podcast folder, there's even more subfolders. Another example is in my client file folder. I have folders within that big client file folder. I have subfolders with each of my clients' names on them. And then within their client folder, I have even more subfolders grouping things by big projects, like if we're working on their website or if we're doing their e-newsletter. If it's January, then we'll have a January 2019 folder and things like that. And everything that has to do with that edition is right there in that folder. Of course, the main reason why you have a system in filing your digital documents is that it will be easier in the long run on where to find them. But also, setting it up this way, it made for things easier to share long term when I needed to, as I added staff and added clients. Way back when I converted the MRI medical billing office that I was managing from a huge, let me tell you, it was a huge room of filing cabinets, just filing cabinets, one right after the other. And we had all of our payment remits and charge tickets. We converted from the paper version of going to those filing cabinets to having them digitally at our fingertips. And the thought process that I went through in filing our digital files, I just converted how we had it from the filing cabinets, and as we scanned, we just duplicated that type of organization into our digital files. First of all, that was a huge undertaking that my staff did to scan all of those individual pieces of paper to file digitally in every single one of those filing cabinets, while at the same time keeping up with their daily work. It took a better part of a year, and we devised a plan to burn the candle at both ends, so to speak, and we met in the middle. And that work really paid off, and it worked out fantastic, because when I had to move the billing office from Missouri to Florida, I didn't have to pack a room full of filing cabinets. I didn't have to pay for office space to house that huge room of files. Digital storage is not only more convenient in the long run, it also is a heck of a lot cheaper. You can buy terabytes upon terabytes worth of space for a fraction of the cost of renting office space. Well, anyway, when we had a full room of filing cabinets, we had cabinets dedicated to specific MRI clients. We'd have sections. We had 2 main filing cabinets for each client until they spilled over, and then they had volumes. But anyway, we had charge filing cabinets and payment filing cabinets. So then within the drawers, those drawers were labeled by year. Then within the drawer, we would have folders for the month, and the month was labeled on there. And we would file those chronologically. Then we would have a clip full of documents, whatever went into that deposit, all the payment remits from the insurance companies, or on the flip side, if it was a charge, it was all those charge tickets for that particular day. And those individual pieces of paper were in a folder, and that was labeled something like CHG, which meant charge, and then the year, like 2019, and then 12, and then 12. So that would be December 12th, 2019 charges. And this meant that all those papers within the folder was a charge batch for that particular client and was posted on that particular day, in that particular year, in that particular month. So we do the same thing with whether it was payments or charges. We might have just pre-labeled the payments PMT, but it was super obvious to us which ones were charges and which ones were payments. And we did it this way so that if we needed to pull the original batch, which we occasionally did need to see the original piece of paper to get some clarification if there was a miskey or whatever, or if we needed a copy of a payment remit to go along with a claim form for a secondary insurance. Well, I'm getting into my old past on how to do medical billing. But anyway, we did it this way because we could find that piece of paper easily based off the date that we posted it into our billing system. So there was a cross-reference. And when the time came to digitize, we simply took the same philosophy, the same filing logic, and just put it into our File Explorer. We had our main folder called Charges. Then within the Charges folder, we had created subfolders with the name of each client. And then under the individual client folder, we had the year, so there was a year folder, and then within that, we had 12 folders that we labeled them by month. And then within the month folder, we had individual documents that consisted of several pages, and they were PDFs. We scanned those files into a PDF, and the file name was something like CHG-2019-08- 10. So that meant it was a charge that was posted. It was a charge batch posted in 2019, August 10th. That's how we could find it quickly. Now I have to say real quick, the scanner that we used for that huge project was not your ordinary little scanner, Epson scanner, or a little workforce thing that you might have in a small home office. No, it was a nice big scanner that could go through thousands of pages of scanning and can do duplex, doing front and back. We had our systems of making sure of counting pages to make sure that we did not miss a page, because it was important to have every single sheet of paper digitized, because sure enough, if two pieces of paper got stuck together, the one that was missing is the one that we really, really needed. But it was important to us to have every sheet of paper scanned, and we had our system. And I'm super proud of those team members, wherever they are now, what they accomplished in that project. At the time that I organized our staff to file in this manner, I really had no idea that just in a few years that we'd be closing the doors of that company. But by filing this way, it made my life certainly a whole lot easier when I needed to give the MRI centers that we managed their data back. I could easily copy everything for that particular client onto an external drive or a DVD and just give it to them. And they were able to access all those files, all that history. And so I still use that general philosophy today in my business when it comes to my client files. And as you can imagine, we have a ton of files. I have them for both personal, for our travel blog, and professionally as we grow our business. Our files may take up more space than your files, but the way we file things, we need to easily find it when we need to. So since we have a lot of data, as you can imagine, we have different places where we keep our digital files. We definitely don't keep everything on our computer. And in fact, we have volumes of external drives. I seldom save anything to my computer. I just don't. Instead, I have other means, and here's why. Way back when I was working for a large healthcare system, it was ingrained in me by our tech department to never, ever save files on my local computer that you aren't willing to lose. What happened there, if the computer crashed, which, sooner or later computers do crash, that all of the files saved on the local machine would just simply be lost. And that could really impact your job. And back then, working in such a large organization connected to a central server with hundreds upon hundreds of computers, connected to it, we were set up to have this drive on the central main server specifically for our stuff. It was really drilled into me to never, ever save anything on the local C drive or in the documents folder on the local machine. But everything needed to be saved to, I don't even remember what they labeled it now, but I'm just going to call it the S drive for shared drive. And the reason the S drive was so important in that organization to have all our Word documents, our Excel spreadsheets, anything for the livelihood of our job, it was saved on the S drive because the S drive was on the main server and it was backed up frequently, like every day, whatever the IT folks did. And that's how we did it in that large organization. My folder named Gayla Scrivener on the S drive, I was the only one besides the IT people that could see it, and it looked like my C drive, but I knew it needed to be on the S drive because it would be backed up. And like I said, if the computer crashed, No problem. The IT department would simply hook up a new machine and map that machine to my S drive that was already backed up on the mainframe or whatever they called it, and all my data was intact. Now, switching gears and now owning my own business, I really carried that over into my habits that IT department drilled into me for so many years. To this day, I try very, very hard to not save anything onto my computer that I'm not okay with being blitzed if my computer crashes. And I don't have a central server like that big healthcare organization that I used to work for had. But with that said, it is such a cool thing that technology has come so far since then that we small business owners have access for that type of scenario, and we can set up our cloud storage, which is basically the same thing. I happen to use Dropbox to be my quote-unquote S drive. I can access my Dropbox account from any one of my devices, and I can sync the data, which I do sync the data, to where the files are on my computer so that it looks like just another drive, and I can easily move things there. When I change that document, and the file is automatically updated and synced, and the versions online will be updated. And if I share the files and folders with others on my team or with my clients, they will get the most updated version as well. And I like that I can also go to my web browser and be on any computer if I needed to, and in a pinch, I don't have to have a particular computer to access those documents. Now, there are other cloud services out there besides Dropbox. I just happen to like Dropbox and have invested to have a team version. So I pay for my version. For my team, the ease of file sharing it's just easier. And other services for cloud storage are things like OneDrive by Microsoft, Google Drive, and Apple iCloud. And that's just to name a few. And most have free options. But then as you get so much space, as you use so much space, then you'll need to start paying a subscription, which is very well worth it. You're renting space for a filing cabinet. That's basically what it is. And I have gigabytes upon gigabytes of files in my Dropbox folder. And it's worth it to me to have much more than the 2 gigabyte space for the free account. But many of my clients don't have that many documents to even fill up 2 gigabytes. So they are super okay with having simply the free version, and they can grow into a paid version later. But I don't save everything in my Dropbox account now. A few times a year, I do a quick assessment and start to archive and move things out of my Dropbox and onto external drives. And I have volumes of those basically revolving around the purpose, and I label them and move those folders. And I like to keep more things on Dropbox that I want to have access to, but I don't necessarily need to see everything all the time. And I think that there's times where it's appropriate to just archive. And that's why I move them out of Dropbox to be easily out of my fingertips and out of my mind and onto an external drive. And here are a couple of examples of how I archive or what I archive. First are my podcast files. I have all of my podcasts saved, all the recordings, all the notes, the Word documents that I might have for notes, all the images, things like that. And in my marketing folder in Dropbox, I have a folder called podcasts. Then under podcasts, I have folders with the name and number of the episode. So I know quickly where everything is. And then within that folder, I have all the original audio files. I have the edited files. I have the working Adobe Audition files. Just everything that I need for that edition. And it takes up space. And after a few weeks, once the episode is published, there is no need to have that in the Dropbox file. But I don't want to delete the files. For some reason, I just want to keep it. And since digital space is cheap, and I may want the original files again someday, but I may not. But digital space is cheap, so I want to keep it. So roughly quarterly, I move the older podcast folders out of Dropbox and onto an external drive dedicated to podcast archives. Another example is archiving client files. If we no longer work with a client, or there are old projects or design files that we aren't using anymore, I'll do the same thing. I'll move those files, those folders, out of Dropbox and onto my external drive dedicated to client archives. And I rarely need to get in there, but it's in essence a backup and just kind of stored away. But there have been times where those archive folders have really come in handy. Early on in Scrivener Solutions, I designed a catalog once and archived all of those files because I was done with that project, and the client, is a one-off client, but I still remain in contact with them. And my client received all the files they needed once the project was over. And so I archived. I moved them out of a shared Dropbox and onto an external drive. Well, about 2, maybe 3 years later, they were going to update their catalog, and they had somebody in their office then on site with the skills to do the job, and they should have had all the files as well so that they could not recreate the wheel, but they could update the file. The only thing, their files were lost or they were corrupt. I don't remember which, but they couldn't use the files. So they reached out to me and said, "Hey, do you still have those files?" Well, luckily, I could save the day for them because, their files were archived, and it was super easy for me to pull out that external drive and be able to copy those files in a way that they could retrieve them, download them on their system, and then they didn't have to start over. Like I said, for me, I like to keep more updated files that we as a team will need to access. I like to keep those on Dropbox. And if I'm traveling and if a former client needed something that is way, way old, that had been archived, well, I simply would have to, they'd have to wait until I had a chance to get back to my main office and access it on the physical external drive. One last thing that I do with my digital files is that I back them up. There are backup services out there, and I've looked into some of those that you could sync things externally, but they go by space, and I have a ton. Like I told you, I have a ton of gigabytes of space, especially when it comes to video and image files because of our travel blog. I decided long ago that I prefer a mega big external drive, and I actually have a couple of them, and I copy the data that's on my external drives. Those archive files that I just said? If I make major changes on an external drive, then I'll put a copy of it over onto the mega external drive. I just tuck it away and we never use it. I don't remember how many terabytes my big drives are, but over time, if I need more space, I'll just simply buy another drive. And I just copy folders from one drive and paste them into the other. And if the files are already in the mega folder, I just tell the system to skip the exact duplicates and keep the changes of the newest files. I like to have that extra backup external drive, that mega drive, or drives in my case, because once I save the files out there, I just store it away, and we very, very seldom will we access it. That backup had saved our life, though. Well, I like to think so. Because one time, one of Robert's external drives that we use for photos, we were out and about, and one of those external portable drives, something happened to it. I mean, it just kind of fried somehow. It was corrupt, and our hearts sank because all of those images were lost. But then again, we had a drive backup on our mega terabyte drive. So we were able to recover all of those images. Well, actually most of those images, because we were trying to load newer images on there. So of course those were not on the backup. When you're using an external drive consistently, like how we do for our image files, it is not within the computer. It's not taking the computer space, but it's an external drive that you're putting new information on all the time. You need to back that up, especially if it's a portable drive and you're taking it in and out of everywhere. Something might happen to the drive, and it's nice to have a backup. In fact, it could be a matter of really livelihood for your business. So it's easy to have your digital files and feel all scattered and out of control because they can be saved anywhere. You most likely aren't working with as many files as my team and Robert and I are, but start your plan early. Start your plan early in your personal life on how you organize your pictures, for example, and how you back those up. How do you offload your pictures off of your phone onto an external drive and file those in a way? How do you file your documents? To me, anything digital, you can categorize it and file them in a filing cabinet so that you can retrieve them more easily, whether it's on your tablet, whether it's on your phone, your computer. Having a system now will help you in the long run as you add more clients. You'll already have a system on how you save files and how you archive files and how you back up files. And when you have your system in place, it sets you up not only to be organized for yourself, where you can find things a little bit easier, but you're setting yourself up to where you can build your team and files and folders can be more easily shared. Well, I hope today's show has been helpful to you. I know I find it extremely interesting to know how someone else organizes their stuff or how they use certain tools. And just hearing how someone else does it and their thought process sparks ideas in me to improve my processes. And that's what I hope for you, that me sharing how my mind works, as scary as that might be, but sharing how my mind works in organizing and backing up my files, that you get some ideas that might help your file organization. If you haven't already, I'd love it if you'd subscribe in iTunes or your favorite podcast player. Doesn't matter. I'd just love for you to subscribe. And I'd love for you to drop me a note. Maybe leave a comment or email me at podcast@gaylascrivener.com and tell me what your biggest takeaway of today's episode was. Was there anything that on how I organize the files that sparked an idea that could help you? One little thing? I'd love to hear from you. Well, until next time, have a fantastic week.